Hey everyone, my guest today is Laura Donnelly. Laura grew up in Belfast, Ireland, and trained at the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama. She currently stars in The Hills of California on Broadway, a new play by Jez Butterworth, directed by Sam Mendes. She won the Best Actress Olivier Award and was further nominated for a Tony Award for her role in The Ferryman, also written by Jez Butterworth and directed by Sam Mendes. She also collaborated with Mr. Butterworth on Broadway in the Broadway show The River. On television, Laura has starred in Werewolf by Night, The Nevers, Outlander, Sugar Rush, The Fall, Merlin, Missing, Occupation, and more. Her film credits include Token, The Program, Hello Carter, Dread, Insatiable, and Right Hand Drive, so many more. But enough of my reading her glorious credits. I am so thrilled to have you on the podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm thrilled. So I got to see the hills of California, and I think before I deep dive into what I consider to be one of the most beautiful, truthful plays I've ever had the privilege of seeing, I wonder, rather than my quickly trying to explain to listeners all over the globe who haven't had the chance to see it, I'm sure you're skilled now at like a quick, truncated description of the play. And I think that would be helpful so that we could then deep dive into the beautiful work,
Sure.
if you don't mind.
It's a play based mainly around women, a family of women. And we look at their lives in two different eras, in the 1950s and the 1970s. And in the 1950s, we have the mother, Veronica, who is raising her four daughters and is kind of training them in hopes of them being able to go off to California and find stardom in a kind of Andrew Sisters style musical quartet. And then we have the 1970s part of the play where those four daughters have grown up and are now um, standing vigil for their dying mother upstairs. It's based in a guest house in Blackpool, which is a seaside resort in England. And yeah, we just follow the consequences of what went on in the 1950s through to the 1970s when they're grown up.
And it's been widely shared that you play two characters in this play. I keep thinking of that title of the play, I Am My Own Wife, You Are Your Own Daughter in
Yeah.
this play. There's something incredibly universal about this play because all you have to do is be a human being and have a family, whether you're tight with them or estranged from them. And there is something to sink your teeth into. And then it's interesting for me now watching shows as a parent, which, it really shifts your perspective and what you dream for your child. And and in this particular play, there's a mother who dreams really big for her children. This is pre-social media, this is pre-Kardashian, this is just a time of hoping for better. And the kids in this play are wildly talented, as it
Yes.
turns out. I had two of the younger cast, Laura, who plays younger you,
Yes.
on the show. Uh, can we talk a little bit about the Andrews sisters? I certainly, as an American, obviously not of that generation, was very familiar with that kind of girl singing group. Is
Yeah.
that something on the other side of the pond? Was that familiar to you? Were they new for you?
It was kind of vaguely familiar to me. I certainly would have recognized the name, and I think I would have had an idea of the style of music and the style of singing, but I don't think I could have named a song. And I'm sure for the younger girls in the play, they may have never heard of them. But they were, I think, a big deal in the UK in that time. And so, yes, I was definitely aware of them.
So I bring up the Andrews sisters because that is the sort of world of singing group that the mother in this play sort of uh, helps curate for her kids in terms of what kind of performance they could do to get out of this small town. Um, you and your husband, Jez Butterworth, have collaborated many times together. Um, did you meet by working together
Yes.
originally?
Yes, we met when I auditioned for The River in England. It had its original Royal Court run a couple of years before we brought it out to Broadway. And so we that was how we met, and we went through the whole of rehearsing and performing that play before we got together.
So it's sort of a showmance in that you met during the show,
Yeah,
but what I think we're saying for the record is it happened later.
it did. It happened later. I mean, we obviously had a very strong bond from very early on, but so much of certainly my part, my admiration for him was based in his work, and that was very much the kind of what I was concentrating on at that time. And then it was later on that it blossomed.
Well, what's really incredible is, you know, I can only imagine that growing up in Belfast, what your life is now was probably not exactly what you imagined it to be. Were you even aware that this was something to dream of?
I don't, well, I guess I was aware, but it was literally, as you said, dream. I don't think it was something I ever thought was realistically possible. And certainly the culture in which I grew up didn't um, wasn't terribly supportive of the notion that you could go out there and achieve something that um, seemed at the time to be so far-fetched, I guess. I mean, my abiding memory of growing up in the 80s in Belfast was that it was um it was a place that for me didn't feel like it had a lot of magic. You know, it was politically, obviously, at the time, very complicated. And it was there was a very particular atmosphere there where there didn't seem to be a lot of room for dreaming um and and thinking of ways to get out and have a bigger life. And really it was the theater that opened up that idea for me. You know, I didn't act when I was a kid, but I was a part of dance productions that would go into a theater and put on, you know, just maybe like 4 nights in a row, put on these productions where I got to go in and have a real experience of what it was like to be backstage in a professional theater, even though these were amateur productions. But it just gave me the feel of that, and that being in a small, dark space where stories get told and there are costumes and makeup and lights um and it was this the atmosphere of that felt like it was dreamlike in comparison to the world I stepped out into whenever I left the theater, and that really got its claws into me.
Can you tell me a little bit about what was going on in your house, where it might relate or not relate to the world of the play that you're in right now? Like, who was in the house growing up? Did you have siblings? Did you guys, you mentioned dance. What was sort of the, I don't know, the extracurriculars for you guys?
There was a lot of extracurricular, which in many ways was probably a way of my parents keeping us safe in Belfast, keep us busy, keep us off the streets and doing, you know, interesting things that we enjoy doing. And also crucially, at that time, cross community things. I grew up with two sisters and a brother. I now have another sister and a brother by my dad's second marriage, but I grew up with two sisters and a brother, and so me and my sisters were all gymnasts, and my dad, after a small time of us doing that, decided to also take on coaching in that gym. So it was very much a family affair, and we would go to a gym that was you know, what would be seen as the other side of town politically and religiously in Belfast. And so that was that was a really important experience of that as well, which was being part of a community that was not divided along those lines. But there was a lot of that. There was a lot of I kind of gained a I guess um, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm trying to describe, I can't remember the word, for going on a gymnastics mat and holding my nerve and performing. So again, it wasn't stage, it wasn't acting, but it steeled me for that. And then I did Irish dancing, which also produced these storytelling dance productions that I was talking about. So between those two, I got to experience what performance was and experience holding my nerve. Um, and at the same time, kind of that took up the vast majority of my days after school. I was a busy, busy child.
So how did you, I mean, you went to the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama. So is that sort of a post-university experience, or was that your university
That
experience?
was my university experience. So in often in the UK, actors will go straight to a drama school. You won't often do university first. You get a degree in acting at a drama school. And so I did that. I think I took a year out of school just to be in the world, and then went to Glasgow to study drama.
But how did, like, from gymnastics and dance, how did did you go into it thinking I want to be an actress, or were you just interested in experiencing a school that was devoted to the arts at the time?
No, I absolutely went in thinking I wanted to be an actress. And I had thought that since I was probably about 6 years old. And I'm not really sure where that came from, because at that point I hadn't been doing any acting. I think it was just that experience of having been on the stage, that having felt like a magical place. And the style of Irish dancing that I was doing, and of course this was all pre-river dance. There was no such thing as becoming a professional Irish dancer.
Right.
And it wasn't where that wasn't where my imagination took me anyway. For some reason I landed on acting, and I don't even really know what that was. And now of course I've spent decades since, kind of wondering to myself the reasons that I did start and the reasons that I stayed with it. And I think that those things have always changed over time. But I do think that the drive from that very, very young age, and what still drives me now, was just that fascination with storytelling and the desire to live more lives than just the one I'm given.
Yeah. Did you watch a ton of television as a kid?
No, because I was so busy with those things that
Right. So
I
really, and
very, very, very active childhood. So no, I mean, I would say I watched a fairly average amount in comparison to the average kid, and the same with film. My family weren't particularly um, artistically driven, and I wouldn't say there was a fascination with film or even with theatre in our household. But we did get brought along to Christmas pantomimes whenever I was a kid, and so that was kind of my experience of watching professional productions. And there was really just something about the theatre that did it. And I guess I thought that being an actress in the theatre would be the way to get to live there.
and when you think about, I mean, it's been a few years since you left drama school, but when you think about sort of foundational, I don't know, foundational technique, right? Things that they taught you there. Are there still things that you work from, or a way that you work that's connected to that time in school?
Absolutely, in a very direct way. Vocally, I still use the exact same warm up that I was taught at that school. I think I've probably taken other bits from here and there, different jobs that I've done, and other advice and training that I've got. But fundamentally, it was the the vocal training that we got there was something that was very important to me, and how to use the voice to access a character, and the importance of the voice being grounded in the right place, and how to use the diaphragm and projection, and how that can bring about emotion in the same way as emotion can bring about the voice, that those things are symbiotic. So I do consider it to be a really integral part of developing and expressing any character.
I think I read somewhere, I think maybe your husband said it, that you're an incredible mimic, that you can sort of, if I threw out, and I won't, we're
Thank
not going to
you.
put you through that right now, but if I, that you can mimic actors and actresses that we all recognize, and not just would you sound like Christopher Walken or whoever you chose, but that somehow you would start to look like that person. There's a little magic trick that you can do. Is that something you did a lot as a kid, or is that just something you realized you could do later?
It's only something I realized that I could do at drama school. We had a specific term where we had to um, embody the three of the other actors in our group, in our class. And the idea was to be them, not do an impression, but was to absolutely be them. And I discovered in that term that I had a particular talent for that. And my sister's very good at it as well. So there's definitely something that is just kind of, I don't know, genetic about it.
I love it.
I also often put it down. A lot of the best actors and the best mimics I know grew up in households or situations in which they had to be to some degree hypervigilant. And I think that if you are used to watching your surroundings very carefully in order to know if you are either physically safe or emotionally safe, or I think you become very, very observant, and you also become very good at being who you need to be in those situations.
So your kids, I think you have daughters, correct?
Yes. Too.
Your kids are growing up in such a different situation than you grew up in. Um, are there ways in which you have had to sort of go, wait, Laura, we are not in Belfast. They are just going to the park down the lane. Like, how have you managed to negotiate all of your own childhood, what you're describing, like be safe, fears, all of that,
Mm.
uh, as a parent now?
Two things, I guess. One of which is I think should be mandatory for all parents, which is therapy.
Right.
You have to work through those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not bleeding your subconscious all over your children. And the other is that I do give my parents a lot of credit for having created an atmosphere in which we did not feel scared. I think that I actually grew up having less of an understanding of the kind of risks that we did run by living where we lived, and the experiences that we were having. My parents were, I just think they did a really great job at keeping everything quite neutral. And I mean, that was quite essential because my dad was a doctor across both communities. He had to serve both very extreme sides of the community, and he had to be seen as being a neutral party in that.
Right.
So we had kind of some of that I guess came into our household as well. But they didn't, if they were feeling it, they didn't let their anxiety about that be known. I mean, I remember my mother let me get on the bus and go into town with my friends for the first time at about 11 years old. And my eldest is 8 now, and the idea that she'd be getting on a bus and going into the center of London in 3 years time makes
Right.
no
Hard to
sense.
imagine. Yeah.
But they were very good at trusting us and allowing us our independence and knowing that that was really important. So I didn't inherit a lot of neuroses in that sense.
In this play, it is really remarkable, and I am hoping, you can confirm or deny. It would be incredible if they could film this play, because it would be so great for so many more people to get to see it. Um, Talk a little bit about the mother in this play, and where you, I mean, there's so much music in Jez Butterworth's writing. It's
Yeah,
like it really could be sung almost, right? Like his rhythms are so clear. And it's one of those plays you sit in, and if you are an actress, you're just like, oh my God. I don't get jealous very often, but I was like, to be in a play written like that with all those women on stage the entire time, I thought this must have been the hardest and most incredible experience at the same time. Um,
exactly.
Talk about the mother. She's an extraordinary character, and unlike any other I've seen portrayed. Talk about when you read it, like, what was your initial, you read it for the first time before you even understood, and I play Joan. Like, talk about your initial reaction to this character.
I think that with Jez's writing, what I've always found is that the character on the page is clear as a bell. It is like reading sheet music. It's just it's all there. I don't find that I have to do a lot of digging. It just seems so crystallized, and I I just followed that through page to page, but I felt like within the first 3 minutes, I knew who she was. And who that was somebody who was just trying her absolute best and is so strong and so, I think she's a wonderful mother. I think that she makes a mistake and a horrible one. But she I think it's also, we can look at her parenting in the context of what we know about parenting now, or we can see it for what it is in the 50s. And I think that to see her do what she is doing to give her girls the very, very best life they can have, with everything that she's up against, being her gender, the times that they are, the place she lives, the culture they're in, she's up against it all. And just that fire within her to keep going and to make sure that they are going to be safe just moved me so much. And I, to this day, just feel incredibly sorry for her. I just
Yeah.
think didn't she doesn't deserve, um, for things to end up how they end up with her.
Yeah. The idea of, had she been born, 20 years later, even, right? Like when the feminist movement came into be, like it would have just been
Yeah.
the extraordinary thing she could have done. Um, there's as Laura explained, it's a play where a mother is dying upstairs at the beginning. Everyone comes home. It really focuses on how all of us regress the minute we get back to our childhood home. There's this idea, there's sort of this Wizard of Oz feeling at the beginning. We don't meet the mother in her old age. And at the top of the play, we have no idea what's going to unfold, and that it will be a memory play as well. Um, but I did hear, and I just want to be careful because I don't want to do spoiler alerts. It is very exciting in the way there are a lot of surprises in this play. Um, the uh the idea of you in 2 weeks remounting a show that you had done in London and finding out that the ending is completely different. Can you talk about that? I mean, obviously, it's what a hat trick, like just to learn new line. I mean, all of it, right? Like, deer in a headlight. I get it. But
Oh
were
yeah.
you aware when you did it the first time that Jez was still uncertain if this was the right ending, or did that not even come up during the first production?
I think I knew from very early on that he did want to make some changes. He knew from the first preview, and luckily he didn't say that at that time. I think he had more sensitivity than to let me go out and stage each night with him thinking it was to some degree wrong. Um, but he loved the ending as it was, and as we all did, and so he was satisfied to leave it as was, because he knew that taking it out to New York, he would rewrite. But the way he sold it was there would be some tweaks. And when I sat down to read ahead of our 10 days of re-rehearsal and realized that my character was entirely different, and I was going to now have to essentially created a different character but using many of the same lines, but that those lines would be in completely different circumstances, I cried. And it was the scariest thing that I have done, and yet I knew the moment I read it that it was the right thing. So there was no question. There wasn't like, but please, can we just keep it the way it was? There was no
Right.
question that I knew it was right. I knew it was better. I knew that once we got past the hurdle of re-rehearsing and recreating, this, that it would benefit in every possible way from it. So I knew that I had a job on my hands, and I knew that the person that I was going to be best to really give up and give over to was Sam Mendes. And I just knew that he would help me get that there at all costs.
So it's a perfect segue. I wanted to talk about Sam because this is at least your third production that I know of. I'm sure you guys have worked on other things along the way.
Oh, just the second with me and Sam.
The second.
Yeah,
That's right. The River was it. Yes,
yeah.
yes. Tell me and I asked the younger actresses too, sort of, I have been the great beneficiary of his work by being a viewer of it on film and on stage, and just finding myself changed every time. Like, he's a really beautiful artist, but I don't know, as an actress, between him and his incredible design team and the people he casts and the words, what's so beautiful about how he does things is I can't feel his handprint. I just know I feel so safe
Yeah.
to go on whatever journey he's invited me to. Can you talk a little bit about, if we were doing a TED Talk about Sam as a director, what does that mean? How does he set up a room? What does he say to you guys on day one? Directors always have their spiel. What happens?
He manages to make everything feel like it's very low stakes. Like, we're just in there, we're just finding out, we're rehearsing, things don't need to be decided, it's all to play for. There's no judgment. It's a very, very safe space. And he establishes that very early on, by once everybody has done the, showing the set model and the producers have spoken and all of that. He just gets rid of everybody that isn't essential in the room, and allows the actors to just feel like this is, any other rehearsal. And I find it very easy to quickly forget that he is who he is, and that Jez is who he is, and that there's a lot of expectation and pressure on a new production that those two men are helming. And it just feels like we're just there to explore the work. And so it just feels like so low pressured, and he encourages our curiosity, and he makes no strong moves early on. He's finding out about it at the same time as we are. And so his hand is very, very gentle in the guiding of shaping it, and he really allows actors to discover it for themselves. He's never prescriptive unless you want him to be. I mean, there are points, particularly in that re-rehearsal, where I had so little time and so much to try and figure out, that I was just like, yes, tell me what to do. And then he would happily do that well, because the other thing that not many people know about Sam is that he's an incredibly good actor. And if you do need him to get up and show you how it's done, he can really do it.
I love a good line reading. I'm happy to fill it in, but please, literally tell me.
If I am not getting it and you
exactly
have what it is, please tell me.
Yes.
And I asked him to do that on a couple of occasions there, which is not like me. One of his greatest skills, I think, in a rehearsal room with actors, perhaps his very greatest, is that he knows how to treat each individual actor as an individual, according to what it is that they need, according to how they are going to respond best. And they can be very, very different ways of directing each actor. And one day in rehearsal, we were just on a break, and he was describing what, out of the four of us women, what each of our processes are internally as he could see it, but in the form of like little elves in a mine or in an office block or whatever. Like, one actress is with that she just has rows and rows of filing cabinets, and that these elves are just going up and down them and pulling out files, and it's all very efficient. And and they were all four were vastly different descriptions, and bang on. I mean, it couldn't have been more perceptive. And he spots that, I think, so early on in any actor. It's quite astonishing. And so you do get what you personally need from him. And for me, a lot of the time that is very independent work. It goes on in some way, somewhere between my brain and my absolute subconscious. I mean, I think I do a lot of my work while I'm asleep, and then I come in and I kind of, present it, and he'll like shape it a little bit. Whereas in the re-rehearsal, I didn't have time for that system to work on me, to just dream it and let it percolate. And so it was me much more turning to him and said, how do I do this? And he was able to tell me. So he's remarkable in that sense, and he makes it feel very safe, like I say, very low pressure, and you just know that he has got the steadiest hand there is. So you don't need to be concerned about any other aspect other than the bit that you need to do and the things that you need to concentrate on.
So if you held up your working script of the play, is your script like filled with writing in the edges, or is it more in your heart and mind and spirit and it happens that way rather than note taking?
The latter, for sure. There's barely
Yeah.
any writing in my script whatsoever.
Yeah.
I used to think that that was terrible. I used to think that, as I was kind of a much younger actor, I used to think surely it's the sign of a good actor that you have notes all over your script and that you've done all, and you've got your notebook full of different things and pictures and all of the rest. And so I used to impose that on myself, because I just thought that surely that's the work. It has to be there and be seen on the page. And then over the years, just as I became more confident in my own abilities, just strip that back, and back to the degree that I have very little in the way that anybody could. I can't leave a trail of anything behind me that anybody could point to and say that's where it came from. It really does happen in the head and in the heart and in the dreaming and in the body very much. And uh, and my script is empty of my writing, but an absolute jumble, and none of the pages will be in order. I will have gotten it out of its binder on the first day, and I will have worked off a couple of pages at a time, and everything's just out of order and a mess, which is actually not like me as a person in real life, but in work it is.
So how long into the New York run were you able, like, were you still looking at your script in your dressing room every night before going out on stage, just worrying about the lines, or once previews began, were you no longer in shock about all the new
Yeah,
words, or were you doing line throughs, speed throughs with each other? Like, how did you
I
handle
do,
that?
I do a speed through every single performance in my own head, or like out loud in my dressing room. I Before I go on for act one, I will have speed run act one in my dress.
Even today,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
throughout. So that's part of I wanted to ask you a little bit about your pre-show before, but during half hour. Well, first of all, how early are you to get to the theater? What's your ritual?
It starts off at the beginning very early. It'll be a couple of hours at least ahead of time. And then over time, as I begin to relax into it more, then that will be pared back somewhat. But even now, I'll still usually get there. It will be an hour ahead of time at the minimum, and usually an hour and a half. And just, to allow for half an hour, 20 minutes to just kind of be in the dressing room, chill, do whatever I need to do, eat, whatever. And then I do love ritual, and my rituals, particularly through previews and up to opening of a play, will always be very much the same. I will get into my comfy clothes and I'll do a bit of something physical. I'll do a bit of yoga usually, which really helps to calm the nervous system. So all that breathing and the moving just really helps with that. And then I'll do a good long vocal warm up. um Usually it'll take probably about half an hour, and that is just all really to do with settling nerves. I mean, of course, a vocal warm up is essential to technically, for any performance, and I do it every performance. But at the beginning, it's very much about the ritual of settling nerves. And then I'll kind of get into a system whereby my hair will get done in the same order, my makeup will be done in the same order, all of the things will just, and I'll hold on to that. Like I say, it'll be reduced somewhat. My vocal warm up won't be as long now as it used to be. I'll kind of speed through it a bit, and there'll be, I won't always get to do a lot of kind of physical movement before I go on. I'll do a little bit of stretching and stuff, but it's always a version of the same thing, and it's very, very ritualized.
Um, You are one of 4 sisters in this play. It's 2 we see you guys young and we see you guys more present day, right?
Yeah.
The age you are when you come back to visit your mom. Um, I can imagine there's an incredible camaraderie between all of the women. Did you feel protective of the younger girls in the play, or did you see, like, they're great in their unit and we're in our unit? Talk a little bit about the mother in you and letting that go so the actress in you could just get to work.
I feel very protective of them, and at the same time, I am able to recognize that they're all grown-ups. They all look very young, but they're all grown-ups. They're all professional actresses and have been doing it for a long time. Some of them been acting since, they were very, very little kids. And so they really know what they're doing, and they are all incredibly talented, incredibly solid, not nervous, not jangly. They're really they are all theater animals. So I think I was able to spot that very early on and realize that they don't probably need as much mothering as their characters might make it seem like they do, and instead that they need good friends. They need the older women around them to just help with the advice. We're always all there for the advice and the making sure that they're being looked after, and for being able to speak up for them sometimes if they are not quite feeling confident enough to do that for themselves. So I think that what we try and do, the 4 of us who play the older sisters, I think what we try and do is just lead by example. I think that we just try and show them how you can be, how you can use your voice to ask for, and or sometimes if needed, demand what it is you need and want. And they're growing up in a very different era than any of the rest of us did, because their understanding, I think, of who they can be as women in the world and in a professional, capacity, is much further down the evolutionary line than certainly mine was whenever I was their age. So they don't need that much help, but they're just the loveliest, sweetest, most talented professionals that I've come across, and it's a joy spending time with them.
Well, it's such a glorious company. I'm wondering, did your girls see the play or parts of it?
They only saw they we were in Tech in London in the West End, and I just wanted them to see the younger girls' musical number, their Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy, because it's really the only bit that they would either have interest in or that would be suitable for them, that they would be able to get anything out of, I think. So they were coming down at the lunch break of the tech session in London to meet me for dinner, and we had they were late because of traffic and they were going to get in. I was really trying to line it up with when they might be able to catch the girls doing their number. And we had teched the whole way through the number. And as you well know, tech sessions they're you got to get through them as quickly as you can. Their time is of the essence. But Sam knew that my girls were coming to see this particular bit. And so I saw that we had finished up, and then my girls walked into the theater and I waved at them from the stage and they were very excited and they sat kind of in the front row of the mezzanine, and Sam looked around and said, "Anybody need to see that again?" And everybody was like, "No, no, we're all good. No, lighting's good," and everything. And everybody's like, "No, we're fine. That's all good." And he was like, "Really, nobody? Let's just do it one more time anyway." And I was like, "Oh, thank you, Sam."
Oh, what a sweetheart. What a sweetheart.
It was so good of them. So they got to see that, and that was, really exciting for them. And they loved seeing me in my costume and up there. But they know very little else of what it is that I'm up to, other than I leave in the early evening and I'm exhausted during the day.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, since you do have to do it again tonight and many, many more shows to come, I just want to really thank you for this time, and I hope you'll come back because there's so much. We've only scratched the surface of your magnificent career. It's so thrilling to see you really just inhabit these roles with such integrity, like incredible integrity. It's so beautiful. Is there a little known fact about Laura Donnelly that you can share before we say goodbye?
Little known fact. Oh, I know I've thought of this before, and then it's completely escaped my brain. I think, oh, there are definitely others, but I think I'll go with the idea that had I not been an actress, I think that I would uh really like to be a long haul truck driver. And that would be my second choice of career.
Okay. Okay. Not a doctor, not a lawyer, a
Yeah,
long haul truck driver.
yeah,
Well, I'll see you on the road,
absolutely.
and I'll honk and you'll honk back. And congrats on this absolutely magnificent play performance and all the beautiful work you put into the world. Thank you, Laura, for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun.
Me too. Me too. It was really fun. I agree. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.